tonight. We certainly hope that these interviews gives you a clear understanding of what's required to minister and mentor to those who are in prison and those who are coming out. And if you've been listening long enough, you know that by now that one of our themes is moral character transformation. It's a topic that we discuss all the time. And not only is transformation key to surviving prison, but it's key to preparing yourself for coming out of prison and back into society. But how are we doing as a nation at aiding those behind bars that need moral character transformation? Well, the answer lies in the numbers. The United States still has a recidivism rate of 60 to 65%, and that does vary by state. Tonight, staying on the topic of character transformation, we will be talking with Carlos Vasquez, who's wearing the Dodger hat. Carlos knows this topic pretty well, I'd say. He spent years in California prisons, an experience he used to his advantage, I think, to transform his character. And that enabled him to find his purpose in order that he could help others find their purpose. So several years ago, you might remember this, but we did interview Carlos, and it was kind of closer to the time that he had been released. Well, he's sort of a brand new guy right now, I would say. Just to give you some idea, Carlos is a published author. He does speaking engagements now all across the country. He does workshops in prison. He has his own weekly podcast series called How to Battle, and you can find that here on our website. I highly recommend that you look that one up. He is the CEO of How to Battle. He's also the co-founder of the Pathway to Purpose Project. So he's a pretty busy guy, I would say. And so thank you so much, Carlos, for just taking the time to be with us tonight.
No, thank you for inviting me to share. I'm always honored to be invited to anything that you helped put together, David. So anytime.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, you just kind of give us, there's probably a few people here that don't really know your background at all. So why don't you just tell us briefly how it was that you at a young age got on the wrong side of the law and ended up spending so much time in prison?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this too. Who were you when you went into prison?
mm,
Hmm.
yeah. Whenever I reflect back on my old self, it's kind of like thinking of I'm so disconnected from that person now. 'Cause as much as I've transformed my life, that I have to think back and realize, and it's always kind of strange to think of that person because it's so different from who I am today, and mainly at my core, in my heart, who I am today. I feel like is the main thing. I've always had like this feeling of I always had this feeling like I cared for people in a sense, even when I was doing a lot of stuff to hurt people. As crazy as that sounds, I just cared for the wrong people, and I cared for the wrong things, and I believed in the wrong ideologies, and so yeah. But I mean, I think probably because it goes back to my childhood that I wasn't really raised to, I wasn't raised to really make it in that world, and what that means is that so all the way up until about 12 years old, I mean, I grew up in like your ideal family, white picket fence in the suburbs, both of my parents, medical field, college graduates. We had the perfect life. I mean, I was sheltered from everything, went to Catholic school, played baseball. That's where my love for the Dodgers started, by the way. Um,
And you were a
so
catcher, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I was a catcher, and my dream was like to be a professional baseball player. I mean, it's like crime and prison and drugs and gangs was not even anything that I knew about. But
Wow.
I was 12 years old. My father left, and his presence was so strong in my household that when he left, everything fell apart. My mom
Oh,
went into a really bad depression.
oh,
She mentally couldn't take care of me and my sister anymore, and so. My sister went into the streets at 16, got pregnant, got addicted to drugs, and I ran away when I was 13 years old from home,
Wow.
and I ended up in homeless in the streets. 13 years old, and then 14, I became a gang member officially. Started using drugs when I was 14. Started drinking alcohol and getting involved with the whole criminal world at 14. And I remember all these men that were coming into my life at that time filled that void that my father left. These people that
Mm,
became like my father figures and mentors and brothers, and they
mm,
taught me all the things that I needed to survive in the street life. And I just got so connected to that. I got so loyal to that, and just
wow.
those became my new rules to live by day to day. And yeah, I was really lost. And then that tied in with, drug abuse at such a young age, and then the violence that I saw, particularly seeing my best friend kill himself in front of me when I was 16 years old, really
Mm,
triggered something in me that I didn't know how to handle when I was a 16-year-old. And so I became really violent, and that was how I dealt with the pain and the fear and the things that I didn't understand about myself. And so I started to do armed robberies, bank robbery, home invasion robbery, selling drugs, and
mm,
I got arrested. That I was in the system my whole juvenile life, like in and out of juvenile hall, into group
mm,
homes, leaving
mm,
those, AWOLing from those, going back to the gang life, and eventually
mm,
just all caught up with me. At 18 years old, I got arrested and
mm,
was facing life in prison for armed robbery, multiple counts, and they were trying to give me life in prison for my gang enhancement. So yeah, I was fighting my case for 9 months. Every time I would go to court, they were like, life in prison. We're not giving you any deals. And then one day,
mm,
after about 9 months, I would go into the courtroom. The district attorney was like, I'm going to give you one chance. You got 5 minutes to make the decision. He offered me a deal for 20 years with two strikes. This was a
mm.
time when, they strike you out for stealing a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
Wow.
remember standing in the courtroom and looking at the clock, and looking at my public defender, who couldn't really offer me any advice. Like, and I remember looking behind in the courtroom in the gallery, and realized that nobody was there. And it was like this
Mm,
reality check for me that, like, man, I'm all alone in this world. And the one thing that I have, the only thing I have, was this reputation and this fake identity that I had created. And so I attached myself so much to that, and I went on my way to prison for 20 years. When I hit prison, I was 19 years old. Yeah, and my first decade in was like
mm.
created even a worse human being than walked in when I first walked in, because of the
Wow.
nature of maximum security prison in California, the nature of it back then,
Mm,
and even now. It's like, you got to go in there and really prove yourself. You have to go in
yeah.
there and uh, become a monster sometimes. And
Mm, mm,
so, and the people that I respected and that were most respected in that world were that way. I mean, so I just
mm,
modeled my behavior after that, and
mm,
continued to fuel my rage and ego, and then landed me in
mm.
solitary confinement for 3 years. And
Wow.
it was in solitary for 3 years where I had my
Mm.
conversion, I had my transformation, and I've never been the same since.
Wow, I want to talk about
So,
that. It's that. How
yeah.
did you challenge those traits in yourself? Did that happen at that time? There were traits in you. You said fake identity. How did you challenge the traits of the fake identity that you were using for self-harm and harm of others? How did you challenge that?
Yeah, I hit rock bottom. I hit a breaking point where, like, I wanted to end my life. And I never got to that point in my life until I was in solitary. And I was really, um, I became at peace with, like, ending my life. And I couldn't wait to do it. And I remember,
Mm,
um, it was the belief. It's crazy because it wasn't even really me. It was somebody coming into my life and believing in me before I believed in myself. And like many of you are doing for others. I mean, that's what it is. It's like, we're sometimes so broken and so lost and just so caught up in this, like I mentioned, this identity that the only thing we have, that it takes another person to come in and see something within
mm,
us. And for me, that was
mm,
Oh, that was the chaplain in solitary confinement who came to me at a time when I needed somebody most. And it
Mhm.
wasn't like I called for him or, or the chaplain comes to solitary all the time. It was a random day near Christmas. And I knew it was Christmas because he was handing out Christmas cards and
Mm.
Bibles. And he, he came to me at the cell and we talked and he's like believed that there was something more within me. And it wasn't like just this fake thing to say because you just think it's the right thing. But like he truly believed that. And I felt that. And from that point forward, I started to challenge the person that I had become. And it was really off the foundations of this chaplain who believed in me when nobody else did, who saw
Yeah.
me like as a human being, rather than a number or an inmate. And it was like, man, that's all I needed. It was just that. It was just that one
Yeah.
person. And
Yeah.
and then obviously I years and years of work, but
But
I
how did you know
just
what to challenge? How did you know
yeah.
what to challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question. I discovered it through reading. You know, I didn't know what was going on within me until I identified it through reading. And once I started to read books like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl and
Mm-hmm.
Nelson Mandela and Malcolm
Mm-hmm.
X and all these
Mm-hmm.
books that where I was able to read about real people who were going through similar things that I went through, but made a
Mm-hmm.
choice to challenge and do things differently. And when I started to identify through reading psychology, like why I had feelings of guilt, shame, and I had these nightmares, and why I felt the way I did, and in retrospect, it was because I had developed PTSD that was never healed and that I never processed through. I didn't understand. But once I understood it, and I realized that these were the things that were keeping me from truly experiencing life to the best way that I could, I started to challenge that because I know
Mm-hmm.
that like that I realized through reading that that my fate was either two options. It was either spend the rest of my life in prison or end up dead. And I just refused to
Yeah.
accept that at
Yeah.
that point. And I
Yeah.
drew inspiration from the people I was reading about who overcame it as well. So I learned it through reading is when I really truly figured out what it was to challenge and
Yeah.
identify it.
How did you challenge violence? Because that's a toughie for a lot of people. It feels like it's self-justified. I'm going to hurt you because you're going to hurt me, or I'm going to something along those lines. How did you challenge
Yeah.
that? Because that was part of the gang life.
Empathy. It was understanding why that person that I used to want to kill, why that person that I used to want to stab or hurt, why that person is the way that they are. Why they became this person. It's because the things that they
Mm,
experienced throughout their lifetime, the trauma and the encounters they had even before they were probably born. Because I
mm,
once I looked back at my life and I realized like this great life I came from and how that feeling was to come from a great life and how I was just so joyful and happy as a kid. And then all of a sudden I'm thrown into this world where
mm,
everything is negative. And I started to see people and I was like, damn, like his mother was a crackhead or his mother was a prostitute or his
mm,
father was in prison his whole life or he used to get beat.
mm,
You know what I mean? So I start to empathize and understand
mm,
why they were the way they were, which means is why they were so angry toward me. And when I empathize with them, I should overcome those thoughts of violence.
yeah,
I overcame that because I understood it.
yeah. How did you, and this is another big one, I think, and that is forgiveness.
Mm,
Um, how did you forgive yourself or the fake self, if you will?
yeah, I that was the hardest thing, man. Like, yeah, like forgiving myself, and I still struggle with this. Like to be honest, because I've done now that I'm like so compassionate and so like caring for people, and I feel people really deeply when I work with them. It's like
Mm,
the thoughts or the things that I've done in the past, the people I've hurt that I could never take back. It really kind of I've chosen to take that and let it fuel me in life and let it my mission and my purpose. But back then, when I wasn't in that state, it was very difficult for me. I was very hard on myself. There was really no self-love, and so
mm,
I forgave myself once I was able to truly get to the point where I could forgive my father. because I was so connected to this idea of like trying to make my father proud. Like there was this thing there that I always
Yeah.
carried with me. First, it was hate toward my father, and when it was resentment and blaming him for everything, because I realized the moment he left, everything changed. But once
Mm,
I like really started to understand and empathize, like I mentioned, I forgave my father, and I realized that I didn't want to
mm,
be remembered for my worst act. So how can I
mm,
only remember him for that, and that I'm going to give
mm,
him another chance to show me another person. Like I want other people to give me a chance. And so when I did that, I was able to get to the point where I could forgive myself because
yeah.
I knew that my mindset was not the same, Carlos, as when I walked into prison and when I was hurting people. It's a
Mm.
different person. I've had transformed my life. And so that's when I was able to truly forgive myself.
Hmm. How did you get feedback on that? Did you hear it from guards and COs and other inmates? How did you people go, oh wow, dude, what happened to
Yeah.
you? Is there any of that? Any kind of feedback that you got that just got I'm different?
Yeah, it was when I first got out of solitary and I had all this information and all this stuff that I was able to learn. And what I knew what it did to me, I got out and I started to organize groups in the chapel on the prison yard.
Mm,
And
mm,
uh, so it's funny because that's where I first met Sister Mary Sean, a mutual friend of ours.
yeah.
She helped me to start to develop these programs and give me programs that I can teach, like insight and anger management, all these things. And so I started to run groups, and I would see men in there have these breakthroughs and open up about all kind of
Mm,
stuff in their life that they hadn't opened up to anybody about. So that feedback that I was getting was like showing me that.
Wow, that's wonderful. What good do you think? I'm just thinking in general here, but what good do you think that your time in prison served?
Oh man, well, good. I mean, it'll help. Prison, I always tell people now, like prison is a gift. Honestly, like what I went through, what I experienced was a gift, and I choose to look at it that way. I don't feel like I was a victim in any way. I don't feel like that what I went through was made me, was not necessary for me to be who I am and to find my purpose, because it truly, truly is. Like I couldn't be helping so many people and be living life to such a full experience and doing all the things I do if I hadn't experienced that. If I hadn't lost everything, I wouldn't appreciate everything so
Mm,
much more. So yeah, I would say that's a great thing. And then it allowed me to meet some amazing individuals that I'm still friends with to this day that are out doing amazing work in the world and helping people. And
mm,
we helped each other grow and develop. And so those friendships and those connections, those brothers, I mean, I can never have met them had I not went through that journey. And we overcame so much together.
mm.
It's like you connect, you have a bond with some other people that can never be measured. And so there's so
Yeah,
many great things and all my knowledge and wisdom and everything.
yeah. How do you think an inmate can find their purpose in life in prison? You think of it
Yeah.
outside because you got all this freedom and I got all these resources and I can take off. I can just go find my purpose and take off toward it. But in
Yeah,
prison, you're kind of limited. How do you find a
exactly.
purpose? How do you find purpose there? Or can you?
Yeah, I think it's deep, but I feel like that what prison does once you choose to start looking at it that way, once you choose to look at it this way, what prison does is that it allows you to be still and it allows
Mm,
you to be present and to
mm,
truly be in your experience and and also allows you to pause and dream and visualize what you want in life. And so like I know now that I'm a free man and I've only been free 4 years in a few months, but I don't remember pretty much anything from 18 and beyond that, like little things and moments, but my whole life was prison basically mentally. So now that I'm able to see freedom and people the way that they operate and young people especially, like I don't know many people that have really stopped and thought about what they want to ultimately accomplish in life and who they want to become and what
yeah,
impact they want to have. But in
yeah.
prison, you do that. You do that and you have that time to think and to like visualize
Mm,
who you want to be and you get to know yourself so well, right? Because you're encased in this small place And so you truly have that your self time, that right, that
Yeah.
isolation time that's of just you and you. And so
Yeah.
that would allow you to discover something, an inspiration, through reading, maybe something that you learned in
Mm.
there to help you survive. Like, for example,
Mm.
drawing and art. I know so many amazing artists in prison,
Mm.
that started there. I know so many amazing people who became mentors that started there, and because they had that time to really pause and figure out what they were passionate
Mm.
about. So it's doing the work. If you're in prison, I feel like it's doing this reading, it's doing the work, it's expanding your mind without limitations of like where you want to be. And when you find that visually you find that, it's like it's gonna it's gonna it's gonna make you're gonna know within your heart, like this is something I want to do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Do you think that's why stillness is so important? Because it allows you to plumb the heart.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stillness is it's when I was in solitary confinement, I remember like that just being alone, being in isolation,
Mm.
and not having anything really new, meaning like visually. It's like, so anything new was like either conjured up within my own mind or what I was reading through my books.
Mm.
And so to truly experience that and like almost like pretend like I was there, I had to be very still. And through that
Mm.
process of stillness, I started to like have these internal conversations with myself and like look at my past and like reprocess things I went through and then connect it with what would I do different today. And if you do that for long enough in years at a time, you start to rewire your brain. And that's what I
Mm.
basically did through stillness and through work, the inner
Mm.
work, and
Mhm.
the solitude and the suffering and the struggle of being in
Mm.
isolation with all your regrets and all your dreams so far away, right? And
Mm.
and so through that process, it was so powerful, and it's like there's nothing in life that I've ever experienced aside from that out here. Um but I feel very blessed because not
Mhm.
many people were able to use prison for that experience, and
Yeah.
so that's why I try
Yeah.
to help people so they don't go down that path to go in there, because I know that like my journey is very rare compared to anybody else in prison that I ran into,
Mm.
maybe a selected few. But
Mm.
so I'm really big on helping people like either when they're getting ready to get out to not go back or to not even go down that path, because I know that the odds are that they won't be able to have that same thing that I
Mm.
experienced. And so that's why like I feel um I'm big on trying to prevent more than anything.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So while you're in prison, though, I just want to ask, what were the steps that you took in prison to manifest your purpose in the world? And I know you said you were
Yeah.
taking Mary Sean's, Sister Mary's materials. Is there anything else that you were doing that was like, this is me, this is me, this feels like this is really me?
Yeah, education was big. Education was really big for me. I dropped out of junior high school when I went to prison. I didn't get my high school diploma. I finished high
Mm.
school in prison. I was in my 30s already, uh, and I got my college degree in psychology, and I started to do mentorship programs, and I started to read and just study and learn. And I found like this thirst and this love for learning. It really was like a sense of freedom for me in my mind, and to explore new things. And even though I may never achieve them, and mentally I was like, okay, I was in prison. I didn't really think much about getting out. I was just very
Mm.
present in my place.
Mm.
But the idea of learning excited me, and so through that, like that was one of the things that I did, and I encourage so many people in prison to do that. Whenever I talk to them and I get calls from prison, it's always like, man, just read as many books as you can, study as much as you can,
Mm.
and also for me, like, my belief system and just my faith and trust in God. It's like it's like when you don't have that, and I know many people in prison who were non-believers, or they were atheists, or even devil worshipers. And
Yeah.
it's I just never could understand how a person could make it through something like that without being able to
Mm.
like connect to something bigger and more higher of a power than you as an
Yeah.
individual, man or woman. Like, so for me, having that connection to God was like okay, God, I believe in you. I trust you. I know you're going to help me. I've
Mm,
already seen you in my life. I've felt you in
mm,
my life and in the
mhm.
presence of my life. I know you're
Right.
there. I know you've guided me and you've helped me survive so much. But I know that I have
Mm,
to go through this right now for whatever reason it's coming next. And I just believe that so strongly, and I still do. And so that helped me too,
sure.
to get to that point.
So God wasn't really a theory, it sounds to me like.
No, no, that's why when I always like people, 'cause I meet a lot of people now with different belief systems, and I'm like, really truly have felt God's presence in my life and still do in so many
Mm,
ways. And
mm,
it's also comforting to know that you have, God there for you through your most difficult times. It's like,
mm.
man, like when you're in just a difficult, like a solitary confinement, or you're like, man, like I might not ever get out of here. It's like you hear this voice, you feel this presence, you feel this comfort of like, man, it's going to be okay. Just don't give up. And it's like
Yeah.
that voice is not of myself, especially back then when I was really struggling. It
Uh-huh.
was something else
Yeah.
deeper than that. So yeah,
Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, Going back to purpose, how did your purpose change your character?
yeah. I It's great because when I was, my purpose to help people when I got out, I didn't know how, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I wanted to help people because I was already helping men in prison for the last 4 years of my prison sentence. I knew what that felt like. I knew that that we were identifying character defects, and we were learning how that we can replace those old negative things that we
Yeah.
were doing with positive things. And we learned about the law of replacement, and we started to like study our lives and our childhoods and understand why we were the way we were, and then have compassion for ourselves and forgive and move forward. So through that process of identifying, these belief systems that I had before my transformation, the belief systems in like crime and gangs and drugs, and
Yeah.
even just like holding to these belief systems that were created to continue to hurt people and create harm. Like I started to realize when I was transforming my life and and assessing those, that I it was just so real. It was just such a like a light bulb that like what I was doing just didn't make any sense at all. It just didn't make
Mm,
any sense, like intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. It didn't make any sense to hurt people. It didn't make any
mm,
sense to create to crime and to perpetuate violence. And when I
mm,
saw that, I was like, I got to change. And so I started to
mm,
study, and I started to learn other people's characteristics, and I started to model
mm.
my behavior after that just to test it. And eventually I
Yeah.
found my own, I found who I
Yeah.
truly was authentically supposed to be, and I reconnected to that.
Yeah.
But like I said, it was through deep work, and that's where I feel
Yeah.
like the
Mm,
difference between those who are successful and aren't successful after prison is that you got to do the deep work. It's not going to be just one thing. It's a
mm,
continuous thing. And I did it for 4 years.
mm,
Luckily, before I got out with Men on the Yard, I did it 3 years in solitary, and I've been doing still continuously for the past 4 years. So it's a
mm.
continuous process of growth and healing.
Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to ask you is that when you were changing in prison, how did that impact prison culture? I mean, it's all around. It's like you're swimming in it. How are you looked at? How are you viewed? How are you challenged? How are you threatened? Or were you?
Yeah, I was. So I got out of solitary, and I was like this
And
new
let me just
self.
say this. I ask this because we have a lot of folks here who are working with people on the inside, and I don't.
Yeah.
It's just important to know that that in general, prison culture rules that particular institution. So that's why I'm asking you. It's like, how did you
Yeah.
step away, knowing that it was going to be could be dangerous, could be really really difficult? How did you do that? How do you face that?
Yeah, and it was very dangerous. When I changed my life, and I was in isolation, so it was easy for me to just maintain this new self. I didn't have to face people, or I could just be alone in my own world. And when I got told that I was going to be released from the SHU, the solitary housing unit, I got out, and I was like so like nervous, and like, how am I going to go tell all these people on the yard that once knew me for this old self, that some of them put these tattoos on my body. How am I going to
Mm,
tell them that I no longer want to be a part of that life? And I remember that I all I did was I thought back to when I was suicidal. I thought back to that day, and I said, look, you were ready to end your life right? At that point. So if you go out there and you get killed for your change, at least you die for something that you believe in truly, like something that you know
Mm,
goodness within you. Nobody else may know, but you know it. And I came to terms with that. And so when I went back and I told the people on the yard, I was like, I figured I'd be stabbed, and I did. I got stabbed twice. But I
mm,
survived, obviously, and I went back to my
mm,
cell and I healed up, and I never left the yard. I stayed on that yard. And
mm,
most people would leave the yard or stuff because you know you're in danger. But I just felt so strongly and convicted in who I was, of this new self, that like I was willing to give everything to it, including my life. So what
mm,
happened was when
yeah.
I went back out there and I started to do my group in the chapel, like I said, and men started to show up to these groups and
Mhm,
started to be a part of my program. When these were men that were lifers, gang
mm,
members, that all had the same background as me, and even worse, started to come in there and have these conversions and these chain transformations. A lot of the people who used to look at me in a different negative way because I changed my life started to come and want to be in those groups. And so
wow.
they started to shift the culture in the yard that I was on, and more people were starting to come into like rehabilitation programs. And so
Mm,
I started to kind of lead that and get other people to support me on that. But it always goes back to like, are you willing to be a leader? Are you willing to be the one? Meaning like that, yeah, you may have to be the one to go through bumps, bruises, heartache. You may not have to get stabbed. You may have to get jumped. You may have to get ridiculed. You may have to be out ostracized. You may have to be talked about and made fun of. But that's the only way through, because you're
yeah.
shedding this old self and becoming new. And people don't understand that. People in prison, they don't understand that. They're not really connected to that. But you need to be a leader to be the one to lead the charge. And I just was
Mm,
always in my spirit to be that way. So,
mm,
but I tell young people, juvenile halls that I go to, when they're like, tell me, like, well, what do I do when like I have to literally fight every time somebody comes in and they're from the other side of the block, or how do I get out of this? I tell them the truth, like, you have to be a
yeah.
leader. You have to sometimes say, I'm not even going to hang out with my family anymore because I
Mm,
deserve a better life, and make
yeah.
that tough decision. And so it's not easy, but if you're willing to go through it, you can break through that cycle.
I just wonder how you help somebody else get to that place. I mean,
Mm,
that is such a commitment there that you are willing to give up your life. Um, and that speaks like probably nothing else can ever speak.
yeah.
How do you help somebody else kind of find that commitment, or do you? They just have to find, I know they have to find it on their own, but how you just, is it modeling? Is that what that's what it is?
It's a mixture. So it's like first leading by example.
Yeah.
Anybody that I worked with, that I've taught, that I've mentored, that I've tried to inspire. It's always like I'm never telling them anything that I hadn't already did or I wouldn't do. And I people sense that, people know that. I think they connect to that. And so that's the first thing. And the second thing is to find something or somebody to do it for aside from just yourself. Because when you're that broken and you're in that state of mind, a lot of times you don't love yourself enough to do it for you. You're barely clinging on to this idea that you're worthy of anything but what you've had already in life. And so that'll help you through it. But ultimately, it's always something bigger. It's a purpose, it's a person, it's a dream. It's something beyond you that you have to push for, and
Mm,
that's what I feel like is important, to help people identify what that is, and then help them believe that it's possible for them, and then doing the work and helping them to understand why they are the way they are, and that they can change, and here's examples of how that happened, and then knowing that sometimes you have to draw inspiration and strength through something bigger than you, right? And that's
yeah.
what I do, and that's what I did in the beginning stages when I really didn't like myself enough to do it for me. It was beyond that.
Mm. You know, we have a lot of people here that are on angel teams or who are volunteers in prisons or volunteer chaplains. They not necessarily had, any experience, inside of a prison as an inmate. But how would you help them? How do you help them to help others to get
Mm.
to some place where they can begin to think a little bit more like what you're talking about. You're willing to give it all up, and that's how do you coach somebody? How do you mentor somebody? How do you help somebody from the outside coming in?
Yeah, it's
Is there any
it's
training
powerful.
program out there?
Yeah, you know what it is? and it's going back to what ultimately helped me, because I did all this and I became all this, but okay, who helped me, right? It always
Yeah.
goes back to the chaplain. It always goes back to the
Ah,
correctional guard that was bringing me books. And those are
yeah.
regular people like you, right? The difference is that they showed up with love. Like
Yeah.
nothing is more powerful than love. Doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, if you have tattoos, if you don't, whatever your belief system is, like love supersedes everything. And if you're truly approaching something from your heart with love and really trying to help somebody, people feel that. It's beyond just like, a look, it's a feeling. And so I always tell people that, like, if you truly
Mm,
want to help people and you don't really know how, to just show up with love, right? And treat that person like a person, like you truly
mm,
care. And if you're not showing up with love, let's say there's another hidden agenda under there. I don't know. People do stuff for recognition or for their self, right? And all these other reasons. If you're not showing up with love and there's something there, then you need to work on yourself. It's like inner work you have to do and healing that you need to
yeah.
go through so that you can be the best person for this person who needs a lot more healing. But love at the end of the day is powerful. And if you work on showing up with that,
Yeah.
that's the work.
Yeah.
That's the most that any of us can do in the work that we do. And you can be at peace with that because you brought the most important thing to another human's life.
Yeah, that's really excellent. I know today, as I said earlier, that you have a podcast called How to Battle, and
Uh,
I've listened to a number of the episodes. They're really, truly, they're truly wonderful. Speaking of love, I mean, I just feel like so many of the people you've interviewed have had such transformations in their life and do so much to help others because of that transformation.
mhm.
What was your purpose initially in starting a podcast? And in other words, what were you hoping to achieve by interviewing people who have managed to remake their lives, after in prison and after prison?
Yeah, I've just always been inspired by the human capacity to overcome extreme adversity. I've always been
Mm,
fascinated by that. And so I wanted to create a place where I can create a space, a safe space where people can come and open up about their most traumatic and experiences, their deepest things that some people have never talked about publicly, and create that space for them to open because I understand that there's so much healing comes with talking about it and being able to connect with somebody and talk things through. And so I wanted to
yeah.
create that space, and then also to inspire people listening out there that may be struggling or going through something similar, so that they
Hmm.
can see that, oh man, this person went through something just like I'm going through, and look at them now. And it's exactly what Viktor Frankl did in Man's Search for Meaning for me. I didn't interview him, I didn't see him in person. I read his book, and that book inspired me to see that, man, I can get through what I'm going through if he could. So How to Battle podcast is just that for people
Yeah.
today out there. And yeah, it's a gift to be able
Mm,
to create that.
yeah. Another issue that we see with people that are coming out, and it's not often caught in the inside, and that is that a lot of times people that have been in prison for a long time will self-isolate and and not seek services, not seek resources, not seek mentoring, not go to church for a while then drop out.
Mhm.
How do you work with somebody who maybe on the inside first? How do you notice it? But how do you work with somebody who tends to self-isolate as a way of just staying away from the community, staying away from maybe feeling judged? I mean, I think that happens a lot, or feeling like I'm stupid, I'm incompetent, I haven't had any education. People
Mhm.
self-isolate for all kinds of reasons. But how do you identify it? Maybe in prison, I don't know that you can answer that,
Mhm.
but how do you deal with it when somebody's on the outside and now you do have to deal with it? Somebody does.
Yeah, no, it's I have a nephew that's going through that right now, and literally just what you described is what he's going through. And he did some prison time, and he had a really bad experiences in prison, and it was hard
Mm,
on him. It was like even though he didn't do much time as I did, it had more of an impact on him in a negative way than it did to me. And some people just are wired different in their mentality. Like prison affects them differently, and so he's going through that
yeah.
right now. And I did everything that I'm talking about here today, and all the advice that I've given. I did all of that.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's realizing and being okay with it. sometimes it's just not, you're not the person to help them. Maybe somebody else is meant to do it in a different time through life. And I think as soon as we realize that, we can help those who are ready to receive it and those that we're meant to help, then it's okay to move past the ones that we can't. And as
Yeah.
much as we try,
Yeah.
and we could try and give it everything, but if not, we have to move on because there's many people out there. There's many people that do need it and do want it, and we can help. And not everybody's ready for it. And so
Yeah.
I think just coming to terms with that and always doing your best, but in stretching without breaking. So meaning,
Mhm.
maybe stretching just beyond where you normally would have
Mhm.
given up at that moment and pushing a little bit beyond that, but then understanding that,
Mhm.
your time, your energy, your love could be given somewhere else. There's somebody out there that needs it. So
Yeah.
you have to relinquish that connection to trying to help everybody. And so once I
Yeah.
came to terms with that, I was able to move past those people that I felt I couldn't help, and many of them isolation. It's like, um,
Mm.
when you're that isolated, and I was there once, it's almost like this paradigm shift that has to happen within you first. And
Yeah.
so, and
Yeah.
no one person could do that. It's beyond us as a human. So that's my belief, and and it helps because it's hard.
Mm.
You want to help so many people, especially my own nephew, right? Like everybody, my
Mhm.
nephew, like I want to help. He's my
Yeah.
blood, but it's
Yeah.
like, but it's my test too because it's kind of like, all right, you're helping all these people, but there's one person that you're not going to be able to help. So I'm going to
Yeah.
humble you to realize that you're just a man. You can only do so much, and it's okay
Mhm.
because he'll have his moment, and when it's time, if
Yeah.
it's his
Yeah.
destiny, yeah,
Yeah. Well, Jesus didn't help everybody.
right,
There were
right,
people
yeah.
that just weren't ready, like you said, and just like
Mhm.
you got to spend your time with where something's going to grow as a result. You're quite involved with your church in Los Angeles, which I'd love to visit at some point. But
Yeah.
why is it that church is so important to you?
Oh man, it's been everything for me. It's crazy because I didn't go to
What's the
church.
one thing, if you were going to say, this is the one
Yeah.
one thing that I love about this church and I just wouldn't miss? What would
Oh
you
man,
say that is?
it's the community of men, the community of men. Um,
Hmm.
they're
What's
like,
so special about that?
yeah, they've been there for me to support me in so many ways. Like through even relationship stuff to business stuff to what do I do in this situation? Or like, can I have some advice or can I just talk?
Yeah.
And in helping me become a better man. And I've always surrounded myself with men and throughout my life, and most of them have been men who were leading me in wrong way and teaching me wrong things. And so to learn from these men who are doing good in the world and are successful and happy and good. It's really helpful when you've been conditioned for so much of your life to be bad. And so, yeah, it's
Hmm.
the men within the community that's for sure the thing that I love about my community of men at church. And yeah, and so it's great to have that support. It's my tribe, like I call it in my book.
Hmm.
I found my tribe, and it's not just the
Hmm.
men within this church; it's other men as well that are doing the same stuff, right? They may not believe the same thing I believe in on a religious aspect, but they also my tribe too, and they come to help me, and I help them. And
Hmm.
when you have that and you know it's there and you could just make a call and I can call you, David. If I'm going through anything, I know I can call you. Like you're one of those people. And so to know that I have that, it's like that's
Hmm.
powerful. That's you don't feel so alone in the world, right? The world
Hmm.
doesn't seem so difficult when you know you have support. And so I have a lot of
Yeah.
great people like that, and it's a blessing.
Well, I feel like I can call you too, and
You can.
know that you're going to actually pick up the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're at the time where we can invite the audience to ask questions. Anybody would love to ask a question, has a question. This is the moment.
And go ahead and raise your hand and we can call on you. Steve, you're muted.
Hi, thank you, Carlos. So did you go back to the church or the denomination that you grew up in that you
Yeah.
probably learned a lot from?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I went through this when I was in prison and I started to do a lot of reading. So I went to Catholic school when I was a kid, and then I stopped talking to God, and lost touch with God when I was 13. And all the way into prison, I just lost my belief. And so after a while, when I changed, I started to read all these different other, books on religion and different beliefs. And so I get out, and it's funny because a sister from an organization kind of she gave me my first job, like part-time minimum wage. Nobody else could give me a job. She gave me my first job, and she challenged me one day to get up and speak on a Sunday mass in a Catholic church, to speak and tell my story. And I did. And that like opened up everything for me because people just came to help. And so I'm back. That's where I'm back now, is like in the Catholic Church. It's so crazy, and that's where I started, but full circle and exploring many different things. That's where I'm at now, and that's where I feel like my heart is with the community there. It's like I just find this connection there, and so I go with it, and so yeah, it's all full circle.
And that church has so much offerings
Mhm.
to help people. The is there this men's tribe group that you're identifying with, besides the general one of just all the people you know from anywhere? But as far as what affiliated with the church, is that
Mhm.
like Knights of Columbus or one of the Catholic?
Yeah, Cornerstone. It's called
Okay,
Cornerstone. Yeah,
cool.
Cornerstone, and then Fishers of Men. We have two different groups. We meet Wednesday in the morning for Fishers of Men, and then Cornerstone is our other community that's even bigger community. So, yeah, those are the two groups that I'm connected with, that have helped me in so many ways, and it give me so many opportunities as well. Mhm.
Bonnie, I see your hand is up.
Yeah. Thank you, Carlos. This was great. Very interesting. Um, I have a question though. You
Mhm.
grew up with educated parents, and I think so many of the inmates don't have that opportunity to really think through things or learn how to process things. They're more influenced by those around them and not being able to know how to
Mhm.
even make choices. Um, Do you have any thoughts about how to approach those individuals to help them find themselves? I mean, at one time I said to them, when you're in solitary confinement, just think about Jesus in the wilderness when
Mhm.
he had to deal with his own questions and so forth, and that it's a time for them to think about things and to read and so forth. But I'd just be interested in your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, you're right. Whenever that was one of the things I truly believe that helped me survive was my education. Uh, I go into prison, and I realized that after a while, I realized that some of those men in there didn't even have, like, I mean, they had an elementary level of reading, and some of them couldn't even read at all. And
Right.
I was already reading as a kid, and I had loved to read and write, and I was educated. My parents were, so that was like it was such an advantage in that world, and it helped me navigate through it and survive, really, I would say. And so what I did was, once I got to the point where I started to mentor and teach, and I would teach these men, things to help them get their just to pass this test. It's like, basically, you have to have a certain level of reading, which is like a sixth grade reading level, in order to even be able to go to the parole board. So it was a whole thing in California, and so I used to help men get to that point so that they can go in the parole board and be able to even get a shot at freedom. But I saw so much of that in there, and it wasn't just me. It was other men who taught other men how to read, who mentored other people. And so and so at the end of the day, if it's a person who doesn't have an education, it's all about just helping them to understand that this time in prison, it's your university, right? It could become that. It could become an opportunity for you to learn. Join every program you can join, sign up for all of the classes, do college courses online. And sometimes we have to be resources to help figure out what's there, because they just don't even know, or don't even know how to act on these things. So I
Right.
would take them stuff. I would show them, like, look, here's all these groups, here's all these possibilities, here's all these things you can start to grow and learn. and just keep doing it and keep doing it and make it part of your routine. And eventually you see guys that, like my friend Trayvon, who didn't have no educated parents. He grew up in the hood, in the hood, the gang infested neighborhood with no father, a single mother who didn't go to college. He's incredibly smart. He's one of the guys on my podcast. His episode actually comes out next week, and he's so intelligent. And it was just all just him doing the work. And I saw him in prison. We were in there together, just did the work. He kept learning. He kept learning. He found his confidence. He found his footing. He just kept pushing. And so it's resiliency really that's needed, which is in us already because we're in prison, but it's just helping a person tap into that and for themselves and figure out how they can start.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see, do we have any other questions or comments for Carlos?
I got a question. Did you create a reentry plan before you left prison? And if so, what did it include?
Yeah, I was helping people, like I mentioned, get ready for parole board. So by default, part of that is you have to have a reentry plan. When you go into parole board, you have to show them you have a plan. So I started helping people do it, and in doing so, I did it for myself as well. And it's funny because the reentry plan, none of it ended up working out. It's like the you do this reentry plan, and then you get out, and all of a sudden you're like, man, everybody has a smartphone. Like, how do I use that? Or how do
Mm,
I set up an email? Or how do I do a Zoom meeting online for an interview?
yeah,
Or
right.
so like you learn the basics of like, okay, um, you got to go get you could study for your driver's license, you could study for your ID. I mean, you could figure out what's necessary to go get your ID. But even that, like navigating public transportation and knowing how to
Yeah,
communicate somebody for a ride, it's very difficult to plan for when you're
yeah.
getting ready for when you get out of prison because when you've been locked up as long as I have. Now, I'm sure
Mm,
if you had did, a few years, it's different because you have a more understanding of the world and the way that it operates, and you kind of know how to navigate technology and stuff. But when you've done 17 years or beyond that, where everything's changed and now there's all this technology, they don't really have the resources in the prisons that I was at to prepare for that. It was more of just get out and go to your parole officer and ask your parole officer for guidance, which was a huge part because I did and he did offer me guidance and he did offer me information, but it was very limited. So luckily, I was very much a person who reached out for help, and I was okay with that. So I was able to get other people to help me through all these challenges. But many people get out of prison don't feel that way. They don't feel comfortable to do that. So if you are talking to one person who's getting ready to get out or just got out and they confide in you for help, that's big. That's important. And that's
mm,
really could be the difference between them going back and succeeding is just you being able to connect them to some resource to do to in some or walk them through something or provide them with a connection to help them, something like that. That was what really helped me to when I first got out. And yeah, but the planning the is still important though. I say that because you have to actively sit there in prison and picture and
mm,
plan to get out. So through that process, it helps you prepare better to be out and successful when you get out. So it's great, but it's not like the one thing that's going to change solve everything. There's definitely going to be some help when you get
yeah,
out and you're trying to make it out here.
yeah. One of the things that, and I raised that because a lot of times I've heard people say that all you have in prison before you get out is your imagination. And that you
Mhm.
don't have an actual, I know what streets look like now. I know what cars are like now. I know that there are things like cell phones and how they work. And so you're kind of living on your imagination. I'm just wondering how much imagination actually gets in the way, um,
Mm.
and certainly sets up expectations that get in the way.
Yeah. Y- in prison, you could imagine, like I did. I imagined a lot of things, but I really
Hmm.
didn't even know like what was out there. It was all just I was in my own reality of what was possible for me, what was out there, what are my limitations, what can I do? So I used to imagine that because it helps you to get through time. You know, you have something to think of. You start to like connect to those thoughts of like, these imaginations, and it helps you to get through the time. But ultimately you don't know till you get out, like really what's going on. And so it could definitely, because you can have these expectations of life being a certain way. You get out there and it's not like that. And you realize that like there's challenges too, even in freedom, that you may not even be prepared to deal with. And so you start to compare like, man, like the problems in freedom and then the problems in prison. And you're like, well, problems in prison aren't, as bad as these problems. And you have people that they want to go back there, and that's
Yeah.
they it's like they're mentally creating this like this force to go back there because they're feeling like, for example, when I got out, my little brother, who was way younger than me, already had like, he had a wife, he had kids, he had a house, he had a career, and he's my little brother, and he had all these things. I didn't have anything. I had $200 in my pocket. That's it. And so it's like I started to compare myself to him and others, and it was like these feelings of like inadequacy and just like I wasn't worthy and I wasn't anything, and like, I'm a grown man and I don't have anything. It's like, and that could defeat you. That can like truly defeat you if you're not
Mm.
strong and you don't have a strong belief in what you can accomplish. And so
Yeah.
I tell people, man, just get out and just do one thing at a time. Set one goal and accomplish that. Get your
Mm.
ID, get your driver's license, get off parole, you know, go to college, get a job, like just one thing at a time, and measure your growth, measure your journey. And don't compare yourself to others, because this imagination that I'm going to get out and do all these things and catch up, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. You have to you have to do a lot of work within yourself first before you can start to have those things too one day.
There was one of the guys that we were working with in Denver, and he got out and he just said, "I need to get a driver's license," that I was told to do. And so
Hmm.
takes a 2 hour bus ride in downtown Denver to the DMV. He gets in there and he says, "Okay, I'm here for my driver's license." They say, "You have an appointment." I said,
Mm.
"No, what do you mean?" They said, "Make an appointment and come back." So he
Yeah.
got 2 hour bus ride back home, but you talk about feeling defeated. He was so deflated just from
Hmm.
that one little thing, that one little incident. He just started to feel like, is this how everything is going to be? Is this, everything going to be upside
Right.
down? I'm just so backwards that I can't figure any of this out.
Yeah.
And so I think the reentry planning process, which is what Embrace Fully is working on right now, has to include some visuals. You need to understand, some things that just some basic things so you're not spinning your wheels, wasting your time, and defeating yourself, like you said.
Hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. You gotta have goals, like different goals, short term, long term. The best thing and is to just, because it could be so overwhelming when you get out of prison. There's so much you have to do, and
Yeah,
it's like these are new things, and so it's just not like just putting too much on yourself and just taking one step at
yeah,
a time.
yeah,
Is really the best situation, and that's what I did. I mean, same thing. I did the same thing. I was very slow when I first got out in terms of what I was doing, and I was very intentional on like setting one goal and accomplishing it. And eventually, I just started to learn and adapt, um, and now I'm able to take on more. Like many different hats, but it wasn't like that in the beginning. It was just one thing, and yeah, so it's best to start there.
Carlos,
thank you.
did you
Mhm.
have a did you have a place to live when you got out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm getting ready to get out of prison, and the one person that I still knew that was out in the free world at the time was my sister, and my sister lived far away from where I typically grew up and know people. But I was okay with that. I was like, man, I'm going to move far away into like this desert, and I'll be there, and I'll just be to myself, and I'll get a job, and which is fine. And it was like, okay, that was what I was going to do. And then like 2 weeks before I was going to get ready to get out, they told me that I couldn't go there. And so I remember I was like, man, so defeated. You have to find somewhere else to go in LA County. You can't go out there because it was a different county. And I was like, man, so defeated. I didn't have anybody. Who am I going to call and say, can I parole to your house? Where, you know, because I have nowhere to go. Like, and a friend of mine who was in prison with me, who was serving a life sentence, he still is, his sister lived in LA. And he was like, yeah, my sister, he's out there. Let me ask her. And he did, and like her and I communicated while I was in prison, and she was like, "Yeah, I'll help you when you get out, you get on your feet, and you know, until you get a job and you get your life together." And I mean, it's just crazy when you think about like that kind of love and just somebody to do that for you, and you literally don't really know them like that, and they just believe in you and they want to help you, and there's nothing they expect really in return, but they just want to see you do good. And so I was blessed with that, and I did. So I paroled there to Long Beach, California, and I slept on the couch. And my parole officer used to come, and he's cool. He's like, all right, as long as you got a place to sleep in this pretty cool area, just get a job. And she helped me. She bought me my first pair of clothes. You know, she helped me those things like she wasn't really tech savvy either, but she helped me on the basics of how to do an email and you know, that belief in me really encouraged me to work harder on myself. Um, and so, yeah, I was blessed, and it's all happened for a reason because had I not went there, I wouldn't be where I'm at today right now. Like I'd have a whole nother life, you know, and it was all meant. And so things that can seem like challenging or like why me at this moment, you realize later that it's all part of, you know, your destiny, and I see that now. So yeah, that was
All part
my
of God's
lesson.
plan for you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Nice. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for sharing. It's been really fascinating.
Yeah, this has been
All
really
the good
Sure.
great.
work you're doing.
Thank you.
Hey, do we have anybody else who would like to? I've got Pam, and then we can go back to you, Bonnie.
Okay,
I was
Now-
just thinking about how important you said resiliency was.
Mhm.
And it is that. And if there's any way to see it as an adventure instead of just a pain,
Mm.
then at least you can, get some kind of bring your own sense of entertainment to it.
Yeah,
And yeah, and
yeah,
just to just help out that resiliency. So I always say patience, perseverance, and a sense of humor, right? And
yeah,
patience and a sense of humor make it easier, but it's the perseverance that pays off.
You know,
Yeah,
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 yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I always say that like life is an adventure. It's very
good.
exciting, you know, and I didn't realize that till I got out. But if you have that perspective in prison, it changes the way that the way that it affects you. And you know, you're like, this is just a part of, this is just another chapter in my book. It's not the entire book. It's just another chapter. And that 17 years in prison was a chapter in my book. Um, and now I have a whole new chapter and I have a whole new way of ending my book. You know, and I chose to take control of, you know, myself, the one thing I can control. And I made different decisions and I worked on myself and I fought through, you know, all of the things I went through. And I got the support and I knew I couldn't do it alone. And I sought the help and I everything. And so, you know, it's like hoping that I could be an inspiration to others to do that is really my mission and the work that I do. Um, and so yeah, it's I love that adventure aspect because it still is. Every day is a challenge for me, especially the work that I'm doing and the weight on my shoulders and expectations and every day is still a challenge. It's just I'm strong enough to deal with it. And that all I went through helped me get to that point. So tell people to get out of prison, you know, you're getting out with something that most people don't have, which is an incredible amount of resiliency. It's just channel it into something now, you know, use that for something good.
mm,
And you know, it's motivating when you hear that.
Great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're welcome.
okay.
Go
David, can I, okay, oh crap, Gab. Two questions just briefly. What's the name of your podcast that you said that you have out there, something battle?
Yeah, it's called How to Battle podcast.
Yeah,
And it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all the platforms.
okay.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
also on Embrace Fully.
Yeah, and it's on Embracefully.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
free here.
It's all
We're
free. It's
linking
free
to
for
it. We're linking to it. I wouldn't say we're.
And,
Did-
and,
oh,
and
go ahead.
one, and is it possible to call you, Carlos, or are you too occupied with what you're doing, which I totally understand?
No, I'm always available to help if I can. If you guys want to contact me for any advice or maybe some resources I have. We have a nonprofit organization called Pathway to Purpose Project, and we help create amazing experiences for people that have just got out of prison or youth that grow up in underserved communities. And so I have a lot of resources and connections to people as well. Even now we're working on helping people that have just gotten out of prison get jobs. So we're connecting with Jiffy Lube, partnering with them to help to identify, train, vet, and then help them prepare to get these jobs. So there's many different things I'm doing. So yeah, I'm always available to help if I can. So
Well,
you need it.
thank you. This was
Mhm.
wonderful. This was really insightful.
Thank you.
Carlos,
Deb, so your hand was up.
Carlos, thank you so much. This has just been amazing. I thought we had heard you quite some time ago, so thank you for coming again. What is your funding? How are you funded for all this, all these different things you're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, great question. So when I got out, like I said, I got my one job and I ended up going to college. I learned business. I started my business. I was able to get my business became basically like what I was doing in prison. So I was doing a lot of like coaching and mentoring. I got some contracts with the city, first started in the school and then I got contracts to get funding to do the programs that we created. I wrote my first book, started to sell that and speak. And then, so that was the initial money I got to help me to transition from out of my job to full time in my work. And then after that, I was able to get to Google to pitch for funding for my business because I was profitable before graduation, which was like an extra bonus that if you're profitable before graduation, you can pitch to Google for funding. So I did, and I ended up getting the funding for my business and then the mentorship of the people that were on the panel, like it was like Shark Tank style type of thing you ever seen the show. But anyway, so that opened up from their connections and that funding, it opened up me to get other contracts with other um, city within the city of Los Angeles, within the county of Los Angeles, and then companies and corporate stuff. We got contracts with them, and then now with our nonprofit, we're getting funding from it's all going to be private donors, private funding. We're not getting any grants. We're not everything is just been through like our just contracts and just doing work and people that have invested in us and stuff. So yeah, just and it's all a blessing, really, if you think about it. I mean, it's just people believing in what I'm doing and who I and what I have and what I've created and the people that are on our team. It's the belief in it and then we're always able to find people to help. So yeah.
So the companies that you have contracts with, could you
Mhm.
explain that a little?
Yeah, so for example, we have a contract with a company called Rarick Pacific Company, and we create like leadership development programs for them. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, and then we deliver those, and we created a human-centered leadership program, and so we're upskilling the managers in all their sites in the United States, and as well as like other companies. And so that all of that is like what we're doing. So basically helping people doing the same work I was doing in prison, just on a bigger scale. It's like helping people like elevate themselves, to develop themselves, to grow, to become more empathetic, to become better leaders, to become better managers for their team, better better students. And so it's very it's just all transferred over into this that we're doing now. So
wow.
Amazing, amazing.
yeah.
Thank you.
And Carlos, is your work primarily with people on the outside, or are you reaching people on the inside as well?
Yeah, both. So my second book, Warrior in the Garden, Seven Rules for Men, that book is in California prisons and beyond that. It's in Utah and Arizona, all over. And that book I wrote specifically for men in prison. And it has also in the back of every chapter is like it's like a workbook type of thing too. So you read it and you self-reflect, and it allows you to do the inner work in yourself. So if you're at the beginning stages of your transformation, like I was, sometimes you're not ready to go into groups yet. Sometimes you're not ready to be a part of an organization on the streets yet. You just need to do the inner work on yourself. And so that's what Warrior in the Garden is. And it's built around what I learned in prison as a man and how I took those things and transferred them into something positive and helped me to be successful in the free world. So I have that program in the prisons. I go into the prisons all the time to speak and to do workshops when I can. So yeah, I'm very still connected, and not and also transitional housings. So I'm very still connected with that and so we do both. We're helping in both areas.
You mentioned transitional housing. What is that?
Yeah, transitional housing is a place where when you get out of prison, depending on your situation, depending on your sentence, depending on what parole recommends, that you go to a transitional housing, which is it's either a house or it's a facility where they have multiple beds, multiple rooms,
Right.
and men stay there while they're transitioning from prison to out in the world. So that program helps them to get
I
out,
know.
continue to do groups within the home, like anger management and all these other things, and then also help them with get their driver's license, get a job, get transportation, get psych help, medical help, whatever it is. They're there to help kind of because some of these people will get out and be homeless. Some of these
Right.
people will get out and go to a home that's dysfunctional or that could cause them to go right back. So but even some of these places are very dysfunctional and people go back. It's because there's drugs there still. There's
Right.
still, that. So it's very difficult to even make it there. But there's a ton of them in LA that I'm connected with. Some great ones, amazing ones that have helped me, certainly have helped me. So um yeah, so those are those homes that you go to. And you're usually there for like a 6 month period max, and then you have to find somewhere to go. So it's not permanent. It's just a transitional
Transitional.
phase.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Mhm.
heard, John, you had your hand up?
One thing I've not heard too much about in these discussions is that of how to restore families. It would seem
Mm.
like to me that if we can get families back together, that could be a very powerful means of restoration. And I just thought I'd ask Carlos what your opinion is. I know, of course, many families are broken and have challenges like
Mhm.
that, but what's your thoughts on trying to restore families?
No, yeah, I think it's if you can, I think it's very powerful to be able to restore families. I forgave my father before I got out of prison, meaning within myself. I didn't like technically say tell him anything yet. It was more of a me thing. And I got out and I told myself that I would go meet my father and talk to him and see who he is today. And I did. And he's a great man. And so like we're like really close now. Um and if I never forgave him, I would have never known this man who he is now. And
Hmm.
so, me working and then meeting and then my mother, connecting with her and in my other family and my other brother and sister that I never knew. So having that, like even though I'm on the other side of town, they're like an hour away. It's just knowing that I have that. It makes you feel so like good and just like it makes you feel a little bit more supported. And also, just good to see that, like that what you're doing, meaning what I'm doing is in some way helping them become better. So if we can help people, restore their families, it only increases the chances of them being successful if their family is willing to also work toward that. Because I know many people who have had to shed their families in order to make it, in order to get out of certain lifestyles and um,
Hmm.
to live their best life and not go back because some families are just so toxic and so still involved in criminality that you go back to that it's all bad, it's going to happen. So So yeah, I think it depends on the family, and it depends on how functional they are and how much you can support each other. But yeah, of course, if you have that, it's amazing. Um and also creating new families. So I think helping a person that's getting out of prison realize that they deserving of their own family, that they can create their own family, that they can be a part of another family that may not be blood related, that they just met when they got out, but they're accepting them regardless of their past, helping them to be like, they're like, oh, it's okay, I can have that. If that's what love is, this is good. And well, that's really powerful too.
Wow.
Thank you, Carlos. And thank everybody for being here. This is pretty special, I think. A lot of really wonderful insights, and I feel like they're deep insights that have lived insights, things that you actually know, not just theorizing about. So that's what makes this
Yeah, of
so very valuable. So thank you, Carlos, and thank you everyone for being here.
course.
And
Thank
we'll
you,
see you at the
Carlos.
Angel Team meeting.
Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate it. And if I could help you in any way, feel free to reach out.
I have a last question. When do you sleep? You have so many ideas and so many fingers and so many pies.
I know. When do I sleep? I actually, you know, I realized like time is different for me, and I'm pretty sure it's like this for many people that get out of prison. In prison you measure by the years. I never really thought about days or months like people do out here. So and also being very present. Um, it allows me to get a lot done in a short period of time. So I still get, 5 to 6 hours a night. So even though it may seem like I'm like not, I'm getting my sleep in. So as much as I can. But
Our world is blessed by you.
yeah, thank you very much.
Most
Thank you.
definitely.
Yeah.
I've got a final question. What brings you the most joy?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great one because there's so much. I would say my friends, Trayvon, Gianni, Bryson, Pablo, like Michael, these guys, I mean, I always tell people they're the one thing that I'm most proud of because I was on the prison yard with these guys, and they've all been on if you listen to my podcast, all these people I just said are on there, and I interviewed them all. And they all had life in prison. They all came from way worse conditions than I did. They all, were in there for 15 years plus. Um, and I knew them before who they are today. And so to see them now, like what they're doing, it just brings me so much joy. And it's like it really motivates me to keep doing the work, honestly, because they're my proof that what I'm doing is actually working. And so yeah, that's my joy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great question.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again, and we'll see hopefully most of you in a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, thanks for coming tonight.
Good night,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Carlos.
Very much.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos.